American Maroon was such that it even made me get excited. I mean, hell, I learned something, and Dr. Short was teaching us. Dr. Short, I learned about Dr. Short looking at Dewan B. And this man, he can tell you just about anything. But what I liked about the movie was the fact, in the sense that he shared with us a lot of information about the Moors. He shared with us information about the various Maroon colonies. And this man, in a sense, he has such a wide knowledge of our history, and that's why I thank him so much for joining us today, because he has this man. He's on demand. He's on demand.
He's the real deal. He's the real deal.
I'm humbled. I still don't know if he's talking about me.
But, yeah, I think so.
But the thing is, I'll tell you, I think to Tariq, because the Dismal Swamp, most people don't talk about it. I think that I may have been one of the few people that would at least mention it to Tariq. So when it came up, because I've been talking to Tariq about, I have to honor the real elder is my cousin. My cousin's name is Thelma Short Doswell. Thelma Short was a Black Nottoway Indian from Blackstone, Virginia. Okay, and my cousin, who's more like an aunt, who went to St. Paul College, that school that Umar Johnson was supposed to buy, that the Chinese have bought. She finished there in the 1930s. My cousin is the mother of Black genealogy in the country. So I grew up knowing that I had family from Senegambia, because my cousin had been going to Africa since the 1950s.
Wow.
So we on record, at least, when they had the bicentennial, they had, I think, 8 families represent the American experience. The Short family was the representative family for Black America. So my folks go back to Jamestown. That's recent Africans and Europeans, but the Powhatan, the Nottoway, these are our people. And so that's something you grow up with, that's who you are. And on other sides of the family, you understand that there's this big break. If you have family from Maryland and from, say, Maryland, Delaware, DC, you're Piscataway, you're one of those smaller groups that's a break between the Algonquin Confederation of Indians to the north, and then the large Powhatan Confederation that's Virginia, down into North Carolina. Are you following? So I have two sectors of Aboriginal Americans who are non-Algonquian groups. But my cousin talked about all that, and her term was called Afro-Marin, African European Indian, was her term to describe who we are. So that's the elder. She died at 93 in 2013. And I'll go one step further. What the bridge is that this woman got duped by a United States Naval Intelligence officer by the name of Alex Haley. And he effectively hijacked her work and put it in a book called, a faction or fictive book called Roots. Roots was the original genealogical name for the family project for the Short family. Alex Haley was the crook.
Wow.
And Roots is a lie. Alex Haley's a fraud. And if my cousin hasn't thrown away Alex Haley's family history that my cousin put together, if he hasn't thrown it away, it's in a dusty basement down in Brunswick County, Virginia. If it's been thrown away, then the Haley family's real history hasn't been chronicled properly. Alex
Absolutely
Haley. Alex Haley.
fascinating.
So Roots was the original book that people buy under the name Roots was called Before This Anger. When Doubleday would not publish Before This Anger and told Haley to come up with a shorter title, he ripped off my cousin, who was his mentor in doing genealogical research. He never paid her. He took her name, Roots, and put it on his book and got it out first. I'll go one step further to say, if you've ever read Roots and you hear the story of Kunta Kinte and his father's sister, who under West African culture, your father's sister's your mother in African culture, her name is Shanti. Shanti is an Akan name, and yet Kunta Kinte is supposed to be Senegambian, so you know that those names don't match up. So where did Alex Haley get the name Shanti from? It wasn't the same. It's not the same linguistic group as Kunta Kinte. Am I right, Dr. Winters?
You're absolutely correct.
Okay, so Shanti is an Akan name. Shanti is my ancestor from Ghana. Has not a damn thing to do with Alex Haley.
Wow.
But yeah, we're gonna have Dr. Randy Shorty here, and the reason why we're doing this, today we're going to talk about Black music culture and Black music. Dr. Short, you know, for those of you who don't know who Dr. Randy Short is, Dr. Shorty's in here. I just sent you an invite to speak, Dr. Short. For those of you who don't know who Dr. Short is someone who's been a political insider forever. And he's been pro-Black much longer, and being pro-Black has gotten him kicked out of the inner circles of Washington, D.C. I had to hit the button. If y'all can hear me speaking, hit the love button or the 100 button or something like that, because I don't, you know, for me, I'm used to YouTube where I can see the Twitter. Okay, y'all can hear me. Okay, cool. Dr. Short, I just sent you a request to speak, Dr. Short. Let me see here. Yeah, I just sent you a request to speak, Dr. Short. Just hit that, or if you're not sure what it is, send me a text. I can't get on my phone now, but send me a text, Dr. Short, if you're unsure how to do it. But basically, it should be a little thing at the bottom that you see. You've been requested on the bottom left of your screen, if you can hear me. So yeah, I know you can hear me, Dr. Short, but I don't know if you can hear me. Shit. Let's see here. Now I'm only speaking to Dr. Short right now. I'm not taking any other requests. There we go. So yeah, Dr. Randy Short is somebody who, if those of you follow me on YouTube, y'all know that he always brings the truth. And today we're talking about Black culture and Black music, because our music and our culture go synonymous, and there's a one-to-one connection going back. We could trace it well over 100 years of Black Americans influencing the world when it comes to our music. Post-slavery, it's like the minute we got out of slavery in the 1860s, here comes the Fifth Jubilee Singers changing the world musically, and we haven't stopped since then. And so for these people who come from other places and immerse themselves into our culture to try to claim ownership of that culture is just fundamentally wrong. And it's some, basically at this point, it's some straight up Judas shit going on. So, we thinking we had homies, but we had a whole bunch of Judases around us. I was on Facebook today, and there's this one guy that used to be around. I never had him as a friend, but I was, people tagged me in this post. Some dude named Jason Reed, who used to always be around, and I thought, I never knew him like that. I thought he was cool just from what I would see from a distance. And I'm looking at his Facebook today, and homie was mad as hell for some reason that Black people claiming our music, Black Americans. I'm like, dude, you had a Jamaican flag in your picture. Like, no disrespect to Jamaica, but you've already delineated yourself, man. So take this. So yeah, we going through that right now. People that we was always that we thought was down, mad at what's going on because we're standing up for ourselves. So I want Dr. Short to break that down on an even deeper level. If you're not familiar with Dr. Short, you're about to be familiar right now. His name is Coon Bomber on here, No, he doesn't have his picture. No, he doesn't have his main profile. Why? Because he's done so many things within Washington. They trace this dude, and he can't do some of the things that we do. But he's validated, verified. If you want to see him on camera, go back and watch Bug Breaking. He was in that with Tariq Nasheed. He'll be in Tariq's newest documentary on Foundation of Black American Revolutionaries. So that's who he is. With that being said, I got Dr. Short here. Dr. Short, unmute yourself. It's a button at the bottom left of your thing. There we go.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna let Dr. Short cook, and then I'll let him get to a few of you guys' questions, and then he has to get out of here in about an hour and a half. So go ahead, Dr. Short.
Yeah, I've got 2 hours.
You got 2 hours? All right, cool.
Yeah, I can go until 3. One thing we need to all get straight, because I just had to tell a brother who's a Jamaican American, who's a good, cool cat, who was born here. Black Americans are universal people. We just don't know it because, one, I'm going to just say it. We too many of us hate our own guts. Too many of us listen to the racist hype of people who hate our guts and use that as a platform to look at ourselves. And that's a mistake here. Let's just deal with something that's very fundamental, because I'm about to tell everybody in Jamaica to kiss my ass and go to hell. Because what you know as Jamaican culture, a lot of what y'all are just so balled over. I'm talking about Black Americans, have no idea what really and who really a Jamaican is, nor do most Jamaicans know. And Jamaicans are often profoundly ignorant of their own history. They're as ignorant of their history as we are ignorant of our own history. But let me help everybody. One of the key cultural pillars of Jamaican culture, Trinidadian culture, throughout the Caribbean, and I'm going to go into religion for a minute, are people called the spiritual or shouter Baptist. I repeat, spiritual or shouter Baptist. Now, what many people would not be aware of, because again, Black American people don't take themselves seriously. They don't know who they are. They don't know how diverse our population is and how pivotal we've been to the entire Black world. It wouldn't mean anything because we don't travel, we don't read, we don't research. More of us need to. The Shouter Baptists in particular in Jamaica, in fact, one of the most important events in Jamaican history occurred in 1831, same year as the Nat Turner Revolt, 1831. And with a great interesting thing, both men, Nat Turner and a man by the name of Sam Sharp, or Samuel Sharp, or Dada Sharp, another Baptist minister, same year, had the most serious revolts against slavery in America and in the British Empire at the same time, same year, same religious sect. But what most people don't know is that the origin of the Shouter Baptists in Jamaica were Black Americans transported to Jamaica during the American Revolution as punishment for the revolutionary white patriots who didn't want to serve King George. Tens of thousands of Black people were taken out of the United States and dispersed in Europe, Canada, and the Caribbean. I repeat, tens of thousands, as many as 20,000 people were taken from the United States to the island of Jamaica between, say, 1779 and 1781, 82. So if you understand, if you know anything about the population of Jamaica at that time, it's a fair guesstimate that anywhere from 5 to 20% of Jamaicans are descendants of a forced diaspora to Jamaica from the United States. So let's just knock their whole fucking culture down from the get-go. And the difference between the Black American and the other people is that they didn't go over with some tripped out attitude that they were better or special, but blended in and added to the culture. Some people go to other countries and become brothers and sisters and mix and blend with the population there. Other people travel and they're like invaders, they're like barbarians. They war against the people that they meet in their own country, and they don't mix in, and they operate against the people that are who are often Black. Is there an example in history about that same time? Absolutely. When the Maroons in Jamaica were forced to leave Jamaica by the British, and they were taken to Nova Scotia, where another group of Black Americans who had fought on the side of the British for their freedom, and for every Black that fought for the American Revolution, as many as 20 fought for the British because they guaranteed them their freedom. The Jamaicans who were taken to Nova Scotia fought against and were enemies of the Black Americans and Afro-Canadians in Nova Scotia. And that's not new in their history. The Maroons in Jamaica that they boast about actually worked as slave catchers and struck a deal with the British in exchange for their freedom. They would prevent people from running away from the slave plantation into the mountains where the Maroons were. So these Maroons that the Jamaicans just praise how they're Black and radical, it's a fucking lie. They basically only looked out for themselves and were willing to sell out, betray, and be enemies of other Jamaicans trying to get the same freedom that they had. Just so you'll know. And where does this logical progression of not treating people right when they go to different countries? I'm glad you asked, audience. These people were taken to Sierra Leone. And Sierra Leone, even as recently within the last 2 weeks, police were shooting people down in the streets. Several policemen were killed. They don't know how many people were shot down by the police in Sierra Leone. The people called Creoles, so Creole, went over to Sierra Leone, and basically they dogged out the indigenous African population and have been sort of an oppressive elite ever since. So the same thing that's being done in Sierra Leone to the Timni, to the Mende, to the Fula, to all these other people by the Creoles, heavily dominated by this Jamaican strain that doesn't want to be a brother or sister. It wants to bear down on the people, yet at the same time, French kiss white power. We see the same dynamic in this country.
My dad says,
We see the same dynamic in Canada. You see the same dynamic in Panama. You see the same dynamic in Great Britain.
They had no clue. But
there's something about that culture that does not, it's not Pan-African at all. It's mercenary, it's cutthroat, and it has a heavy streak of Black self-hatred in it. We shouldn't be having this discussion about whose music is whose. I don't know of another group of people on the planet that are trying to take credit for what Black Americans have done, with the exception of white supremacists, racists. And it's interesting, who do they work with? What's the ethnicity of this no-good, sorry-ass whore Indian vice president? Who are they running to be governor of the state of Maryland, who's not a Black American? Who is the non-Black American that says that reparations shouldn't be money? That's a congresswoman in Texas. Who's the no-good congressman? Where is he from in Indiana? A whole bunch of people that are in political positions. Who is the lieutenant governor of Virginia that feels that Black people shouldn't have reparations? Where are they from? And I'm not saying this to be xenophobic. I have a great-great-grandfather who's Jamaican. I'm a Black American. I grew up here. My family's been here. That's Indian or aborigine, whatever the hell you want to call it, that's been here thousands of years. My great grandfather didn't come over here tripping against Black Americans. He married and basically joined the Black American community. This is called co-association. What you need to understand is most Jamaicans are non-co-associative when they go places. They're schismatic. So you have a high crime rate in Toronto, Canada. You have a high crime rate in London. You'd be amazed at who's doing the shooting and stabbing that you're hearing about in England. It's disproportionately from one group, the Yardie Jamaicans. There's a violent, lawless streak from that culture. In fact, thousands and thousands and thousands of Black Americans have been murdered by Jamaicans, and we're too stupid because we just everything that's Black or brown is a brother or sister, it's a Black American. And by the way, you tell me a society that Black Americans have gone to and sold dope, other than our own communities, and murdered people and engaged in human trafficking and so forth. And they've been a disruptive presence in our community, and it is a fact.
And I was fortunate to get the opportunity.
Oh, and what's the example of them murdering us here? The Shower Posse. The Shower Posse from Jamaica and Jim Brown. God knows, when I looked in the 80s, the number of Black people murdered by these Caribbean gangsters was in the thousands. This is 30 years ago. We may have had 15, 20,000 people or more murdered in our country by people from overseas Black. We don't look at it that way. We're so down on ourselves, and we have a lot of low-life, no-good Black Americans, I agree. However, we don't tend to travel abroad and commit crimes against people.
That's a fact. That's a fact right there. I think Dr. Short's in the Matrix. Right,
oh, no, I'm here. I mean, that was the first thing I just wanted to get. There's a historical basis. Oh, I'll do one more. Just to really, and it's not just Jamaicans. Other people do this. There's a thing called the West India Regiment. The West India Regiment were high yellow or freed Blacks in the Caribbean whose job and their mission was to prevent the other Black Caribbeans from being free. In fact, they were the ones that massacred the Jamaicans fighting for their freedom in 1831, doing genocide on these are the elite Black Caribbeans are either the children of the white planters or they were the henchmen of the white planters. The absentee white landlords put light skin or very brutal Black folks over their own people, which is why there's extensive poverty and suffering in all those islands. And by the way, those same people travel abroad with their attitude. What has happened? The Chinese, the Jews, the Syrians, and others control Jamaica. The Jews, the Lebanese control Haiti. The Indians, like Kamala, control Trinidad. The Indians control Guyana. Blacks are there first. These same Caribbeans that come and start this shit with us in our country lose whole nations to other invaders who are not Black and come and decide to drink the blood of our struggle. And they hate our guts. We've never done anything to them. We need to tell them to fuck off.
That's real talk. That's real talk, Dr. Short. So, like, when it comes to our, are you there, Dr. Short?
Yes, I'm here. I'm just listening to you, brother.
When it comes to our, so when it comes to what's been going on here in America, and they started coming, and now you're starting to see, what you're starting to see is that
they didn't just start coming. No. Even that's the whole. Let's do this too.
Yeah, go ahead.
How did they even get to come here? Do you know?
They came here to plant sugar.
No, no, no. Let me explain. I'm not trying to be smarter than you. One of the earliest cases that the NAACP fought and won was for the right for people from Africa and the Caribbean to come to the United States in 1913. That organization wasn't 5 years old before they started helping non-foundational Black Americans get opportunities. That's how they got here. We opened the door to share. Once they got on the other side of the door, they put a knife in our backs.
Wow, yes, right there. Wow. And then, so they got the opportunity from us. They come into our culture. They play music within our. They sort of sit around and watch us do what we do. And now they're doing the same tactic that the white supremacist does. Like when they're trying to
They've,
play,
they've, all, they've
trying to play
always
black music, what
they've
they do is
always
they basically turn around and say that just because we were there, they say that they created, and they omit all of the black people that they learned what they learned from.
they've always done this. It's not new. This is old. There's a very good scholar by the name of Harold Cruz who did one book, Rebellion or Revolution, another book called The Crisis of the Negro Intellectual. And Harold Cruz, who I knew, who's deceased, talked about the problem that Caribbeans posed to Black Americans in the 1960s. As much as I liked the certain things about Marcus Garvey didn't completely trust Black Americans. And part of why Marcus Garvey got destroyed, in part, was that he only wanted, if truth be told, to give power and authority in his organization primarily to Caribbeans. And it was the Caribbeans who worked with the FBI who did more to destroy Garvey than even our sellout, high yellow, no good, light-skinned Negroes and NAACP like Du Bois. The people who, J. Edgar Hoover's Government Bureau of Investigation, the persons that almost drove Garvey to commit suicide were Caribbeans.
And
See that they don't talk about this.
yeah.
And the only place in the world that where a person sight unseen could be received as a leader that people would give money to and get behind, not even from this country, Black America's the only place in the world that Garvey could go and get a following. Did he get a following in England when he died there? No. They hated him in Jamaica. They spat on him and threw rocks at him, his own Black Jamaicans. In Panama, was he able to make any headway? No. We're the only people who have a concept of universal Blackness and practice it. Don't just talk Pan-Africanism, but live it. And it's not all of us, but there's a significant number of us that believe in brotherhood based on color. And I think that's too shallow. The brotherhood has to be based on ideology and action. Prove, I trust you, but you, damn it, you better verify.
That's real talk. That's putting it. For those of you listening just now coming in, you listen to Dr. Randy Short, speaking of Black culture, and we're gonna get into the music.
And I didn't lie about having Caribbean roots from Barbados and Jamaica and from Haiti. I don't lie about stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And the real cool people from Africa and the Caribbean, they'll tell you that they hear this stuff, how these people do this stuff to Black Americans, and they laugh amongst themselves how they treat us because they see us as stupid and shallow and weak, that they're able to do this. And the reason that they're coming after Tariq and other people so hard is that they're terrified that if Black people wake up, that's sort of like discovering you got a tapeworm. That means you got to take something to get that parasite out your ass. Have you had a dog before and had to give it a wormer and see the worm trying to stay in the dog's ass, but ultimately had to come out? A parasite is safe as long as you don't know it's there. The minute you start identifying it and you don't want it around, it's got to find some place to go. And I want to say something. And I'm not talking about hating nobody. I didn't say people can't come to America. You don't hear me talk like this. You and I talk privately. You don't ever hear me say people from Africa, the Caribbean are inferior, they're bad, or they're dirty. That's not the talk I'm having here. I'm having a talk of you don't molest the man's child when he lets you stay in his house as a guest. When you go to another country, you're in another people's home. Either you can be a good guest or a guest who needs to be thrown out on their ear. Are you feeling me? And a lot of folks are bad guests. Okay. And I'm not saying this out of hatred. I'm calling it out. Let me tell you something. Where in the world do they want Black people? I want to say to you, there's a thing called Windrush in England, where within the last 3, 4, 5 years, the British government literally tried to throw all the Caribbeans out of England. Y'all don't know that. They're going to throw everybody out. So for all this pretense of we have British education and we're in the British Commonwealth, the English were willing to dump them back in Jamaica. Now, what you need to know is the Jamaican government has begged people from Jamaica not to come back because there's so much pettiness and hatred. When people come back and try to establish businesses, they get robbed, kidnapped, killed, murdered. Because the folks don't consider them Jamaican anymore, even if they were from there and decided to come back. That's how tribalistic and barbaric many people in that culture are. You can't come back. You had a better life than me somewhere else, so I hate you and you're English. And it's interesting. So the people that come over here overemphasize their Jamaicanness, and I guess they're hard and nasty towards us to prove it to the people that they left that they still belong. So like people come to America that are Asian, hate Black people to prove white people that they're American.
Here, I think the quick answer
it's insane. So yes, the British want to throw them out. The French want to get rid of their Black Caribbeans. And they're not free, and they're killing them and oppressing them down in Martinique right now. And folks have their mouths poked out. The Haitians aren't wanted, and the Dominican Republic have been stripped of their citizenship, over 500,000. These people aren't wanted anywhere, but they get here where people have fought for them to be here. I want to say specifically for the Haitians, my buddy Ray Fontroy that you had on your show has given up his life to fight for Haitians to be removed from concentration camps and to be able to have a life in America. Many of them are rich, and now they're against Black Americans. We got them out of concentration camps. We protested so the United States Coast Guard wouldn't ram their ships so the sharks would eat them. They get here and they hate us.
Right. Ray Fontroy is really, for those of you who don't know who Ray Fontroy is, look him up. He's a Black man out of Florida. He's done so much.
No, he's
Black
from
people in
DC.
Florida. DC, but he lives in Florida.
DC. That's correct.
Yeah, and he's done
Black
so much
folk,
for us. And he's
Black
one of those
American people.
Yeah.
Black American people have been fighting for the human rights of other people all over the planet, but we don't do it for ourselves. And by the way, the Bible says a man that won't take care of his own, is lower than a barbarian. Well, that's how they're treating us, like we're less than barbarians. They see, why are you helping us come to your country, but you don't help one another? You know how Caribbeans have Caribbean Day all over the world. And you know what? Gays don't try to take over the Caribbean events. However, try to have a Black American event. Now, let me tell you something. They may even use a Caribbean or African homosexual to attack and say you can't do that. See, a lot of folks don't know. You've heard of Audre Lorde, the little broad that had her titties cut off because of cancer, who's a lesbian poet.
Yeah.
You know that she's Caribbean?
I did.
You know,
a
lot of these gay activists that you see that are Black are Caribbean. I'm not saying we got our gay people, but some of the loudmouth folk are often from the islands or from Africa. You didn't know the Human Rights Campaign? There was a Black sissy from Liberia who was running the largest civil rights organization for homosexuals in the country from Liberia. You didn't know that there's a policy to bring over gay people from other countries, Amnesty International, and then be the leadership of Black people. This is part of the disrespect. They can't do this homo stuff where they come from. I've been there. They'll kill you.
Any law that has to do with that area.
By the way,
whatsoever.
Don't put your hands on anybody, irrespective of their sexuality, as long as they're not touching you. But where they're from, they will kill people.
quite
Yes,
frankly,
they will. I
I'm
don't
not
think
quite
that's
sure
right.
even if
So they
we'll
come
see a law
here,
go through our
and because
legislature
there's
on that.
some
So
degree of
I doubt it
freedom or
seriously.
But
openness
at the moment,
about the no good,
modern Jew
stupid black
sodomy is
Americans that are
illegal at
weak.
the moment. So in
We're weak
essence,
and we're what?
homosexuality
15% of the
for
population
to get
outnumbered,
men
and they
under the books
99%
is
on their
illegal
islands
in
don't
other
control
areas.
shit,
We've got
and they call us
certain
weak.
traditional
Imagine
values
how
in our
America would be
society
if it were
that we'd like to
50% black.
preserve.
Even white America has been aware, and
So
since the
you're saying you
1750s, never
wouldn't
wanted this country to have
decriminalize
more than 15% black
that current
because
law?
they could get
I've
undone
just
by the
said to
black
you, we're going to
population
maintain
here.
our traditional
But they're
values.
99% on them islands, and they control and own nothing. And come here and get affirmative action stuff and talk down to us, and we're so stupid. Our leadership is corrupt and filthy. The Boule is internationalist. They like the Caribbeans and Africans more than they like us. We need a revolution in our community against our traitor coon trash. That includes in the church. They'll do missions to Africa, but they won't go into the jails or the schools or the hospitals here in the United States. Missions to the Caribbean. Open up their church to Latin Americans to meet, but you better not try to have a Black History meeting or a cipher or slam. And yet these Hispanics, other people hate Black folks' guts, meet in their church for free. And try to have a wedding that niggas want to charge you $1 trillion to meet in their sanctuary. We've got some insane, disgusting people that we've tolerated in leadership. Many of them are boomers. It's too bad the COVID vaccine hasn't eliminated them so we can turn the page.
That's some all real talk. For those of you listening, just reset the room. We here listening to Dr. Randy Short speak. I will get to some of you guys' requests and comments later on.